Hi everyone, I'm Dale Smith, aka Journo Dale, and we're here to talk about Canadian politics. This last week, there was a federal court decision around judicial appointments and how the government has been slow to make them, and that's creating problems within the judicial system because there aren't always enough judges to hear cases. And that's true. The decision itself was kind of a mess. The judge got stuff about constitutional conventions completely wrong. And the relief is essentially declaratory, meaning he is saying that he's imploring basically the government to make more appointments in a more timely manner, but he can't really do anything about it other than just asking politely or in a strongly worded judicial decision. So there's a lot of problems with the decision itself, but it is pointing to the fact that the government's system of appointing judges in particular, but also other governor and council appointments has been a problem for a very long time. And I figured I would just kind of take a minute to explain what some of the problems are, because not everyone seems to really understand why the government is so slow to make some of these appointments. One of the reasons is because they are relying on a system of essentially self-nominations, which means that people need to apply for these positions. And a lot of times they don't know that these positions are open, or that the government is looking for people in certain areas and so on. And that's a problem. In the past, you would often have people in charge of appointments going out and looking for people to nominate, and tapping them on the shoulder and saying, we think you'd be good for this. There's less of that now. In part, I think because of the perceptions that people who are nominated directly, were patronage appointments. They were friends of the government, so on and so on. Not always the case, but it did happen. Canada has a long history of patronage. Patronage is actually one of the reasons why we got responsible government in the first place, was because the local legislative assembly in the colonies wanted control over who was being appointed to important positions and not have that power delegated to the colonial office in Britain. So there's a long history that is tied to the very foundations of our democracy when it comes to patronage appointments. This has always all been professionalized over the past century and a half. But there is an inherent problem with the timeliness of the self-nomination process. And there's other aspects of it as well in terms of demeanor of people you're going to get who apply for positions as opposed to who get a tap on the shoulder, and but that's neither here nor there for this particular issue. So there's that problem as well. With judicial appointments, there is an issue of the advisory councils. So in each province, there are committees set up with representation from different stakeholders, who then take the applications that have been submitted and vet them and give recommendations as to, is this a highly recommended? Is this a just regular recommended? Is this not recommended? That takes time. And part of the problem is that the government's appointment cycle for those councils would lapse every now and again. And they finally just made those 3-year appointments instead of 2-year appointments. Which means that there's less, that the councils themselves won't expire quite so quickly as they did before. So that's part of the problem. Again, these things slow the process down. But then the other problem is that this government is very focused on making diverse appointments, and that's a good thing. We want more diverse appointments. It's a bad thing when you have just straight old white men in all of the important governor and council positions. So it's important for the government to get more diversity in terms of who they are appointing. The problem, however, is when you are relying on self-nomination and you also want diverse appointments, You need to actually go out and ensure that the people in diverse communities are aware of the positions and are being encouraged to apply, because we know we have decades of experience and studies and so on that show that people in these communities are reluctant to apply. We as a society are drilled into the fact that if we see the image of a judge in our head, it's a straight old white guy. And so a lot of people don't see themselves in these positions. They're reluctant to apply. And we also know that when it comes to things like nominating candidates for elections, if you want a female candidate in your riding, you on general need to ask 7 times before they will accept. This has been highly researched. And what's kind of galling is that the Liberal Party itself knows that this is the issue, and that's why they've set up processes to nominate more women candidates and to ensure that people who are trying to encourage people to apply or to get nominated, ask them the 7 times and kind of keep at it, rather than letting them say, oh, I don't know that that's for me, and then leaving it. We have studies after studies that says that, women and minorities need to be convinced to run for these positions. And they're not doing it. The government says we want these diverse candidates to apply, but they're not doing the work to make sure that they are applying. And in my position, I've seen this year after year after year, when the Justice Minister will go to the Canadian Bar Association conference and say, hey guys, we really want you to apply to be a judge. But that's not enough. Like, you can't just do that once or twice a year and expect people to just flood in the doors. You can't just say, hey, we're making diverse appointments and expecting all of those people to apply. Because they're not, because they need to be convinced, because society has drilled into them that they are not who is being looked for positions like these. And the government does not do the work to ensure that they're getting the people to apply who they want to apply. And that's one of the reasons why it takes so long to appoint these positions. They're waiting for more diverse candidates to come in so that they can have a balanced pool and that they can find, more diverse people to appoint to the positions. But they're not doing the work to make sure that they get the diverse applications. And that slows the process down immensely. And even once they get to that point, then there is further vetting that needs to happen. Oftentimes it's political vetting to make sure that they're not appointing someone who has red flags in their history for one reason or another, which is also fair because the government is responsible for the appointments that they make. That's how responsible government works in that regard. But these things take time, and like we're saying, they're not doing the work to make sure that they get the people to apply that they want to apply so that this process can speed up. And it's baffling that the government has not clued into this 8 years later. Some of us could see this problem by year 2 of this government and started sounding the alarm, but nobody was willing to listen. And meanwhile, it's fair for the Justice Minister to say we've created so many more judicial positions, and that's why there's so many more vacancies, is because they're taking more time to fill. Okay, great, but if you were creating the positions, you should also have known that you needed to speed up the process or put in place ways in which to speed up that process to make the appointments faster, which has not really been done because of the aforementioned problems with the process that this government has put into place, which, yes, makes things more fair, more merit-based, but at the same time, they're not doing the work to make sure that they're getting the applications they want. And that is a problem, and it's one that they need to actually listen and figure out how they're going to do that, which they haven't been. So this all to say is one of the reasons why appointments are so slow for this government. And it's not just judges. I mean, there's been Auditor General's report after Auditor General's report about crown corporations who don't have fully staffed boards because the government is too slow to make the appointments to those boards. And when you have too many vacancies on boards, that creates problems around risk management and so on. Same problem, same processes. And similar again with the Senate. Similar process, similar problems. And the government and whoever is in charge of the appointment system for this government used to be Mary Ang, and now I don't know who it is who ended up replacing her after she ran for a seat and got one. Yeah, they don't seem to grasp where the disconnect is, and that's a real problem for a government like this. So maybe the attention of this federal court decision will help sharpen some minds in the PMO and the Justice Minister's office, and they can, they can maybe figure out that, hey, we need to actually do a better job of encouraging the people we want to apply to apply. Not just saying at the Bar Association conference once a year, hey, we'd like you guys to apply. That's not working. It hasn't worked for 7 or 8 years now, and so it's time to try something new. And that's everything for this week. Join us again next week for some more Canadian politics. I'm Dale Smith. That's at Journo_Dale on Twitter and JournoDale_no_ on Bluesky. And don't forget to like the video, share, subscribe, and support us on Patreon. Thanks, everyone.